When you look at me, what do you see?
Hey everybody, what's going on? Sorry, just popped a piece of gum. Trident White, not sponsor of this video, but this stuff's good and apparently it's supposed to whiten my teeth in a couple of weeks, so we'll see. Welcome to my review for The Equalizer 2 starring Denzel Washington. He returns as Robert McCall, stoic, silent vigilante guy that is now turned into a guy that helps people on Craigslist, or at least that's how the ending of the first one is set up. So Denzel Washington, this is actually his first sequel that he's made in his entire career. I'm not really sure why Equalizer 2 was the one that he chose to do, but either way, I was all for seeing him come back to this role. I found the first Equalizer a pleasant surprise. Denzel's done action movies, but he never really had one that had I don't know, the Equalizer, the original one, had a decent amount of depth to his character. Not like a ton, but you understood him. You understood his reasons for what he was doing. And it really was a classic tale of, you know, just a guy that is wanting to do the right thing in a world where people are not. I really enjoyed it, especially the Home Alone ending with the Menards or Home Depot-esque store. That was very interesting. And I was initially looking forward to this. I was encouraged that the movie was coming out in a summer release, whereas I think the last one was released in September. Movies are usually released in September when there's what do you call it? They're kind of like unsure if it's going to be a hit or not. It's kind of like an iffy thing where it's like, well, it's not quite summer season, it's not quite fall, so we'll kind of just see where this thing sticks. And it surprised a lot of people. Going into this one, I guess what I was expecting is that I was hoping to see Denzel back in the role. I wanted to see the storyline maybe dive in a little bit more into his character a little bit, maybe a little bit more into his past, but more just his motivations and what kind of keeps him going for being the Equalizer and doing what he is, you know, inspired to do. And while the movie did give me a little bit of that, I couldn't help but feel through at least probably the halfway point of this movie, it felt like it was just an exercise of a routine vigilante movie. It felt like a routine vigilante movie after a while. It's a very standard paint by the numbers action movie. The beginning of it started strong. We see him in a different location other than where he was in the first one, and he's doing what he does of taking out bad guys for something that they shouldn't have done. At first, this is where the movie I think started strong, because not only from the action, but I love one of the signature things I liked about the character in the first one, and that character trait is here in this one, is he gives everybody a chance. He is very cool, calm, and collected and prepared with what he needs to do, but he does give them that out of just, if they just drop what they're doing, if they truly, truly just are willing to just move on and not do what they're doing, then he'll let him go. Of course, when does that ever work in an action movie? Hardly ever. I still like that Denzel's character does that, Robert McCall. I think it was interesting and brought a different sort of personality to, you know, what you usually get as just a vigilante being someone that, oh, you killed my family, so now I'm gonna go waste all you guys. That's not really his thing. So I like that they had some of that in there, but then I don't know, I guess like that cool character, like some of those traits kind of started to die off around the halfway point, and it just sort of became a standard action thriller. So Denzel's back, you know, doing what he does. He's helping out strangers here and there, not really giving them any reason. He just sees people that need help, that don't really have anywhere else to go, and he steps in and helps them. I'm pretty sure this was the premise of the original Equalizer TV show. I never watched it, I've just seen the movie, so I'm just going off of that. The movie was actually smart in this angle of having him actually be a driver for Lyft, which is a sort of like an Uber taxi company where anyone can sort of self-enroll in it, and then you just get sent around with your smartphone and pick up people and take them around the places. It made sense for his character to find something like this because it gave him good access to have direct contact with these strangers and figure out, you know, whose lives needed intervening. There's some good humor with that. There's some nice little playful humor with some of the side characters that you have there, and then you have a couple of nice little side missions where, like, there's a girl that, you know, was like sexually assaulted by like some, you know, dickhead college students, and he finds out about it, and he's like, you know, and he doesn't kill him, but he teaches them a lesson. There's a few of those instances like that in this movie, and all those things worked for me. I'm gonna keep reiterating this. About halfway through the movie, it sort of seemed like the story, it became evident that there wasn't much of a story there. I think that Denzel wanted to come back to this movie because he recognized the qualities that are in this character, how he can, you know, teach the youth, which he teaches the youth in this movie to, you know, get out of like the gang life and stuff like that, and it plays a significant role in the movie, and I like that message of it. But the problem is that the movie eventually, after all the clever instances of where to get him in to do vigilante stuff, the actual story itself revolved around him losing a friend, which this is in the trailer. I'm not spoiling any of this by talking to you about this. He ends up losing a close friend of his, and it, from that point on, just sort of turns into a very standard revenge thriller. He's like, oh, I'm gonna find out who did this. Well, he finds out who does it. He has to work at trying to kill him, and that's essentially what the rest of the movie is. And I guess, like I said, when they kind of started more leaning towards that stuff and not so much his early stuff with the lift things and the little side stuff, which I found more interesting, the main story just kind of lost me because I'd seen it done 50 times before and better. The strengths of this movie is that Denzel Washington is an excellent actor with amazing charisma, and he really does lend us a deep soulfulness to this character, and I really respected that. But what I think this movie needed was, I think it needed a more concrete script. I think it needed a story for him to chew into a little bit more, because I think he was kind of reaching at a couple points for just what to do in this story. The one nice tie that the story did have is that there's a point in it, and I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, but if you've seen the first movie, early on, he's going through his deceased wife's 100 books that every reader must read. And he's going through them in memory of his wife, because he promised her that he'd do this. This is a nice thing. I think at one point in the movie he's reading this thing like Old Man in the Sea or something like that, and he gives this monologue to Chloe Grace Moretz about how, you know, the old man's got to be who he is. You have to do, you are what you are in this world. You have to be what you be. Now, whether or not this was intentional or not, there was some symbolism, I think, towards the end of the movie where it involves literally being on the coast of a beach, and there's like a lighthouse, and you kind of got this fisherman vibe, or maybe he was kind of like this at one point. And I'm not sure if that was an intentional tie, but it seemed like that was almost calling back to the first one of how he has to be what he is in this world, and that he's, I don't know, sort of laying down divine justice or something like that. Final thoughts I'm going to give on this movie. The action, when it's there, it works, but I do think that the story just kind of got bogged down on some fairly predictable cliche events that we've seen in a lot of similar action thrillers, and focused a little too much on that and not as much on the action and then more of the interesting setups for him to do his revenge. This movie, it's really not the worst thing I've seen in the world, but I don't think you guys need to rush out to theaters to see this. I'm going to give The Equalizer 2 a C-. I don't think it's necessarily Denzel's fault that this movie isn't more memorable, but I really don't see anyone really talking about this movie a month from now, and I probably wouldn't even really buy it on Blu-ray. Kind of a bummer. If you like the first one, you know, maybe go ahead and give it a shot and see what you think. I'm sure there'll be some moments in it that you'll like, but if you're like me, you might think that some of the story is just a fairly forgettable, and, you know, you kind of wish that Denzel had a little bit more to do in this movie. That's going to be my final thoughts on this movie. Let me know what you think about it, and let me know if you've seen The Equalizer, the first one. Let me know if you've seen that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Let me know what some of your favorite revenge vigilante thriller movies are. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Get a discussion going. It'd be great. Thank you so very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Thanks again.